Hey, Kelly. Thanks for joining me today for the Broadleaf Writers Association Member Spotlight. I'm so happy you could join me today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Could you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you?
Hi, I'm Kelly Young-Silverman. I am an author and a kindergarten teacher. I live in Marietta with my husband and daughter, two cats and dog, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, I know that one of the things that you've done is short films. You've done quite a few of those, and I've seen some of them. They're awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started making short films?
I majored in theater, and while I was majoring in theater in college, I started writing plays. And after I graduated, I continued to write plays, and I met my husband, and he's an actor and a filmmaker, and I had written this script. It was called The Tedious Existence of Terrell B. Howe. It's a very long title, I know. But I wrote that, and I said, man, I really want to shoot this film. And he said, well, why don't we do it? And so he and I created Cake Baby Productions, and we got a crew, and we auditioned people. We got a great cast, and that was how it really got started. We we toured when we took the film to film festivals, and it went nationwide. It was out in California, it was down in Florida, so it was in all these places at the Atlanta Film Festival, and we just loved it so much that we kept making films. We've had about 8, 9 films that we've made, short films. We keep a lot of the same crew. We have a wonderful crew that we work with, and sometimes even the same actors, but we have different actors too. And so we've just been doing that for a while now. I want to say 2008, but I think it's 2010. You'll have to look that up on the bio because all the 2000s start to blur together for me.
I think anything pre-2020 blurs together
Yes,
for everybody,
it's
right?
very strange.
So what is your favorite film that you've worked on?
That's a tough one because they're all your babies, of course. I love all the films that we worked on, and this isn't necessarily my favorite script, my favorite story of the bunch, but my favorite project that I worked on was Too Late Now. That was the one I wrote it and then directed it. That was my big directing moment. So I think that's why that's my pride and joy right there.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun to do.
So I know the other thing you've done is children's books, and you've got
Yeah.
a few of those published. You've got another one coming soon. How did you get started writing?
Ah, so the first book I wrote was Man in the Moon, and I wrote that a while ago. Written it way back when, just because I love the moon. I don't know who else loves the moon, but yes, everybody. But I got this idea of story of a little girl who wants to befriend the moon, and it was really more of a poem than it was a story. And I was looking for an illustrator. I was going to just do self-publishing. I was looking for an illustrator. I never really found somebody that could capture the story because it's pretty abstract. And then actually on a film that my husband and I were making with Tim Glover, we met a writer, and his wife was an illustrator, and so it's very funny how it came to be. And so she said, well, I like your story, let me see if I can illustrate it. And I saw her illustrations, they were amazing. And I said, do you want to try to illustrate this book for me? And so we were both pregnant at the time. Our children are about a month apart. I don't even think they're a whole month apart. They're very close. Anyway, so we were both pregnant, and she was doing the illustrations, and I was finished with the writing. And we said, do we want to try the self-publishing, or do we want to do the traditional route? And we researched both. It just turned out that traditional publishing seemed right for us at the time, just because hats off to people who self-publish. It is a lot of work, lot of work. And I mean, traditional publishing is also a lot of work because you have to query, it's different work. So you have to go out there and query. And we found this small publisher in Tennessee, and they said, it was called Wordcrafts Press, and the owner, Mike Parker, he said, I don't usually do children's books, but I really love this story, and if you want, this will be my first children's book, and it will be our first children's book. So we went on that adventure together, and he published that book for us, and then so that's called Man in the Moon. And then we did a second book that it paired with it a little bit. It was called Where's Wilson, and it's a story about what happens when a sheep goes missing before bedtime.
That's adorable.
Yeah, that was actually a lot of fun to write, and it was fun to see what Aaron did with the illustrations. And so a couple of years have passed. I started teaching at the Lovett School, and COVID happened, and I didn't put writing aside. I still continue to write, but I was writing different genres and different mediums. And then I have a friend, Rosalind Bunn, and she had just published she had gotten with Pelican Publishing, and they published some Georgia themed books or some Southern themed books. And she said, do you have a Southern story, or do you have a book about Georgia? And I said, well, I will get one. And so I started writing this story called Hot Boiled Peanuts, a Georgia food tour. And it's about a little girl who goes to visit her grandparents down in Georgia, Plains, Georgia. And she tries hot boiled peanuts for the very first time. And she thinks this is the greatest thing ever. And her grandparents say, hold up, there's lots of great food in Georgia. So they go around Georgia, they tour all these places, and they try all this food. It's done in rhyme, and it's a lot of fun.
So, what is the easiest and the hardest thing about writing for children?
The easiest and hardest. I never thought about the easiest. I mean, so the stories are shorter. So
that would be, you're not trying to write 100,000 word novel for a child, right?
But also the stories are shorter, so you have to keep it really condensed. Yeah, I think the character, the character development is a lot different for children's books. I think that it depends on the heart. I mean, for me, with the children's books that are in rhyme, obviously the hardest thing is making a coherent, really well told story in rhyme. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the hardest part. For the Hot Boiled Peanuts, though, I will say the hardest part for that book is because it is Georgia themed, and it's also it's not part of the Georgia curriculum, but it hits all the marks on the Georgia curriculum, that I did a lot of research. And I remember at the Broadleaf conference, we were doing a whole, we had a whole meeting about, not meeting, but we had a whole...
Like one of the workshops?
One of the workshops.
Panels?
One of the panels was all about writing fiction or nonfiction,
mm-hmm.
and they were talking about the research aspect, and they said you just start going down these rabbit holes, and that is so true. And even with children's books, because there's so many amazing places in Georgia that you start like, well, maybe I'll put this in there, and I'll put this in there, and that took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to take, and just making sure that I was going in the right route, the route made sense to go in. So research is probably the hardest, and then that's easiest part. I think I said the easiest was keeping this short.
Was keeping it short, yeah.
Simple.
I love that how your teaching roots kind of showed through especially there for a second. We were talking about it being part of the curriculum. It fit into a curriculum.
Yes.
It's not even out yet, and you're already thinking about it being leveraged, by teachers.
Yeah.
And I kind of love that.
Thank you.
So what stories or authors have inspired you?
It's a great question, Jessica. As for the children's books, when I was a child, I had all the Dr. Seuss, the collection of the Dr. Seuss books, and I remember I would be sitting on my bed, and this has also brought back the acting part of it. I would read all the stories, and I would do them in voices, so I would get really excited to the point that my mom or my sisters would walk in and they would start laughing, because what are you doing? I'm just reading my book. But
enjoying the story.
I know, I'm just telling the story. I love that. Robert Louis Stevenson, this is actually it's A Child's Garden of Verses. I used to read that every time I would go to my grandmother's house, because she had that book, and I loved it so much. So that was a big inspiration for me. Obviously, probably the poetry aspect of it too. I really loved Margaret Weiss Brown, and obviously I love Goodnight Moon. But mine was actually, my favorite book by her was The Big Red Barn.
Oh yeah.
I love The Big Red Barn. I think that is such a great children's story. I don't know why, I just love that book. Where the Wild Things Are.
Of course.
Of course. The Velveteen Rabbit was one of my favorite stories.
Yes. Yeah. That was one I read over and over too.
I love that story. For grown-up books, for adult books, for big people, I really love John Irving. I love Alice Hoffman. I love Wally Lamb. I could read anything by Wally Lamb. And then, of course, To Kill a Mockingbird is always one of my favorites.
Well, yeah.
Of course. I love that book. Filmmakers. I love, these are filmmakers. I don't know if they're necessarily the writers. Some of them are.
They still help create stories.
There's a story, because they're all storytellers. I love Christopher Nolan. I love Alexander Payne. And then who's the woman that wrote, this is terrible, I'm going to be judged here in a moment, but who's the woman that wrote Clueless? Oh my gosh, who is it?
So I guess we're both being judged.
And we're all clueless. Hold on, I'll tell you guys, because somebody here knows. Amy Heckerling. I know I should know that. She did Clueless and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I am in awe of her because she wrote these two films that are such a huge part of people's teen years. Not teen years, but so they're such a huge part of people's youth.
Yeah.
Both of them. Okay, Clueless really is one of the greatest movies, hands down. I love that movie.
I think it's part of the millennial identity,
yes.
Especially.
I mean, I think she's brilliant. Anyway, so, and I didn't even know her name. Cut that, please. Cut that, Jessica. I don't know her name. Please cut that. Don't say that. Don't put that. You need to cut that. Okay. But those are some people that inspire me.
Okay. So, what is something that you wish you had known before you launched your writing career?
So much, Jessica.
I know it's a laundry list for anyone.
So much.
But what's the number one thing you wish you could go back in time and tell Kelly back then?
That the marketing is the hardest part that you're going to do, and it's going to take up a lot of your time. That's a good note for any author. And I know that, sometimes people think that authors are introverts, which is not necessarily true, but you will be having to put yourself out there. So a lot. And sometimes it's very humbling. It's a very humbling experience. But I already got the humbling from the acting back in the day. So I was all about being humbled. But yeah, it was definitely the marketing that is something I would tell myself. You're going to be spending many, many hours on marketing.
I think that's something I've heard a lot of creative people in general say that's a sticking point for them.
Yeah, and this wasn't necessarily for advice for me because I got lucky and I just kind of found people that I could do this with. But really, one thing I would definitely recommend to all authors, like at any point of their, and I'm sure a lot of authors will say this, just at any point in their careers, having writers that you trust to work with, a writing group, and just having that strong foundation of just other writers with you. That can, people that you trust their work, you admire them, you trust their voice, and you trust their opinion, and they can give you feedback.
I think that segues us into my next question, which was actually how the writing community has helped and supported you.
Well, that's how. I will say, I've always had small writing groups, and it's been really beneficial. I mean, they keep you going, and they keep you grounded, and they help you kind of let go of the, I guess, kill your darlings is the saying. Like, kind of let you let go of places where it's hard to do.
It's something I've had to be taught more than once.
I know it's really hard. That's a struggle. But I think we are always doing that, no matter where you are in your career. But I will say that I recently joined Broadleaf, and for Broadleaf personally, I've really, really enjoyed it. My friend Marianne actually introduced me, and we were writing partners way back when. We would both be kind of critiquers. Is that even a word?
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll make it a word. It's officially a word, y'all.
We would critique each other's work and give each other feedback. And then we hadn't seen each other in a while, and then we just kind of, we've always been really great friends. And then all of a sudden we just reconnected, and she's part of this group, and she said, why don't you come and try it and see if you like it? And I came out and I loved the people, and then I went to the conference, and I loved everyone there, and I loved the conference, and it's just been a wonderful experience, just being exposed to other authors, and just learning from everyone else, and then getting ideas that you didn't think you have, and also connections. It's really important. It's great connecting on the relationship level, but then it's also great connecting. People can connect you to opportunities. So I definitely say that you want to be a part of a writing community.
Well, you mentioned Hot Boiled Peanuts as your next book. When is that one coming out?
So I'm super excited. That's coming out through Pelican Publishing, and that will be out April 2024.
I know it's already 2024.
Like, how is that possible? I'm like, oh wait, that's like very soon. So it'll be out next spring, and I'm very excited about that. You can pre-order it now. You can see that on my website. And I also have a YA novel. Into the that's in the hands of a agent. So you know what that means, writers? You don't know what that means. Like, we don't know what that means.
It means you have to have lots of patience.
Yes. And also humility, so because you're probably going to be humble in about.
Oh, yeah. So I know folks can find you at kellyyoungsilverman.com. You also have Facebook and Instagram. As I mentioned, those are going to be in the write-up that's going to accompany the video on the website at broadleafwriters.com. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to introduce you to more folks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. It's been fun to be